So very interestingly, sir, घना वर्षों पहला I had seen Moulana Ali na coin issue थयला बसरा नी mint ना, but that is the only time I have seen that coin.
આજે આપણા સાથે શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ પૂનાવાલા હાજર થયા છે. શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ શિકાગોમાં રહે છે. મેડિકલ રિસર્ચના ફિલ્ડમાં શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ એ ઘણી તરક્કી હાંસલ કરી છે અને સાથે ફાતિમી નઈમતના સિક્કાની બી શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈની હોબી છે, કલેક્ટ બી કરે છે અને એના બારામાં ઘણું રિસર્ચ બી કર્યું છે. શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ બે ચીજના બારામાં આજે વાત કરશે. શુક્રન આયા છો અને ઇન્શાલ્લાહ વી હેવ અ ગુડ કોન્વર્સેશન.
Taslimat sahab, shukran for having me. Look forward to the conversation.
तो अपने स्टार्ट करिए कि थोड़ा हमारा बैकग्राउंड कि पूनावाला से पूना से अमेरिका केम पहुंचा है, हाउ यू गॉट इनटू योर फील्ड, एनी थोड़ी.
जी सर, शुक्रिया सर. So sir, મારો જન્મ બોમ્બેમાં થયો. I was born in Bombay and brought up in Pune. So I did all my schooling, high school and bachelor's from Pune. I was interested in computer science, computer engineering. That's what I graduated in from a bachelor's degree, and wanted to do something in the medical field, either become a doctor or look at how we can apply technology and science to medicine and to progress medicine. तो सब मारो शौक હતો US માં આવીને સ્ટડી કરવાનો ને सब અમ્મી અબ્બા તો ઘણા એકદમ ફિકર થઈ ગયેલી લોકોને કે how will I manage. તો the only way around it is કે આપણે મોલામાં અરજ કરી. તો સાહેબ બુરહાનુદ્દીન મૌલાની ઘરે પૂનામાં કોનાકપુરમમાં કોંડવામાં કરમ હતા જે આફત હતી. તો તે વખત મેં મોલાને અરજ કરી કે મોલા મને US જઈને સ્ટડી કરવું છે. તો મોલાએ રજા ફરમાવી, દુઆ ફરમાવી ને કામયાબી હાસિલ થાય એમ મોલાએ ફરમાવી. From that point on, it has been everything. જે બધા ઉમર થયા છે બધા સહેલ થઈ ગયા છે. તો that was the start of my journey. કે જેવારે આખા મોહમ્મદ મોલાએ રઝાને દુઆ ફરમાવી પછી I came to the US and started my study. I studied at the University of Minnesota. So I came from Bombay to Minnesota, and that by itself was a climate shock. So when Bombay it was at 40 degrees Celsius. Minnesota was up in September of 1994, and that was the coldest year in 75 years in Minnesota. The temperatures went to minus 55 degrees below zero. So we withstood that climate change. I studied there. I did my master's in computer science and then my PhD in software engineering. Focused on medical devices, focused on safety critical aspects of medical devices and safety critical systems. પછી graduate થવા બાદ સબ આકામના રઝાસી I started working at a company manufacturing implantable cardiac devices, pacemakers, defibrillators, remote patient monitoring solutions, etc. And I did that for quite a while. Minnesota. Minnesota much. The company was based in Minnesota, and it worked out. Sab ke काम भी Minnesota में करता था, and at the same time I was finishing off my dissertation. So I was able to then apply what I learned from work into my dissertation. And I graduated and I continued working at the same company. So very early in my career, I realized that R&D करना होए, any कोई भी company में, good R&D requires very prudent and agile program management. So that's when I started embarking into program management, and I worked with the PMI at the time, Program Management Institute. They were being formed at the time. They were establishing program management as a field. So I started working with them and I established program management not only at the company, but also started a side consultancy in helping companies mature program management practices. So सभी में किधू that I worked at a number of different companies. हर एक जंक्शन ऊपर जे आखा मौलानी दुआ ने रजा that was the cornerstone. So, हर एक time निकात पर आवाम उठाए तो हम रिज़ाले है कि we're trying this, we want to do that, मोला रज़ा फरमावे, and it turns out to be successful. Most recently, sir, we started a clinical research organization focused on diagnostics and medical devices. So this is coming out of the COVID pandemic. What we noticed is that there was not only a huge spread of the need for diagnostics, but establishing the clinical evidence that diagnostics are able to perform is changing rapidly. So the diagnostics industry is at an inflection point. So the inflection point is basically because a number of things are coming together now. Right? Coming out of the COVID pandemic, many companies have gotten emergency use authorization of their tests. Those are all being converted to standard approvals, right? Regulatory approvals.
The government to approval.
So those are being converted, and that conversion requires a new focus and a new clinical to show evidence of efficacy. पांचों extend करवो पड़े सब because जे emergency use ना अगर authorized है ना सब they went through a very low bar for clinical evidence. So now that evidence has to be expanded on to get the full approval. But internationally also standards are tightening, and as a result, the FDA, which is the governing body for medical devices in the US, has also tightened its standards, right, for clinical studies. They require a lot more topical evidence. So what they're saying is that a lot of US devices ho US mang approvals karwa ho you need US evidence of clinical study. They're willing to accept OUS or outside of the US data, but only as supporting evidence. The primary data source has to be US. But the technology of diagnostics has also changed. Molecular diagnostics, right, which is looking at DNA and RNA fragments, strands, etc., has started growing in popularity. Also because the technology now enables to do point of care molecular diagnostics, molecular testing. So previously molecular testing था to it required large instruments that needed to split the DNA and RNA strands, look at the remnant molecules and proteins, and then detect them. However, that technology has miniaturized. So this can be now at the tabletop. So it's becoming a lot more accessible, and that accessibility has increased the popularity because those tests are much more accurate. Standard test everyone knows what a COVID test looks like. You take a strip, you put a few drops of liquid, and you get a result. So those tests are between 80 to 90% sensitive or accurate. Molecular testing, the accuracy goes up to 95 to 99%. So that is a huge change, especially when you're looking at the more tricky diagnostics, right? Oncology diagnostics, companion medicine, genetic-based diagnostics, etc. To announce the molecular testing is growing in popularity. Also, the price points are reducing, which makes it a lot more accessible. So that's building off of one another. But direct from sample testing is also gaining in popularity. So what that means is that if a person is admitted to a hospital and let's say they have an infection, they would give blood, and that blood is then sent out to a culture lab. So it is cultured to detect the organism that is causing the infection, etc. And that culture usually takes 48 to 72 hours before the results are returned. In the meantime, the patient is treated with broad spectrum medicine, which may or may not be effective. And broad spectrum medicine also leads to the increase in microbial resistant antibiotics, bugs, etc. So direct from sample essentially tries to detect the bug from the sample itself. without having to go through the culture step.
Right.
So that reduces the time frame. You don't know, we don't have to wait 72 hours. So that is also gaining in popularity. Pachi, sub AI and ML is also adding
Artificial intelligence
and machine learning,
machine learning.
which is adding a new dimension to how diagnostics are done. Right? We've seen a lot of articles where a chatbot is able to read images a lot more accurately, is able to detect aspects a lot more with a lot more precision, etc. So that is gaining in popularity. Now finally, the care settings are shifting. And what that means is that I no longer have to go to a doctor's clinic in order to get a test or get a diagnostic done. I can get my tests sent to my home. I will do the sample collection, send it back, and I get the results. And now the next step is the therapy is also prescribed. So as these things go in popularity, how diagnostics are developed, introduced, is changing, and that requires the focus of clinical studies also to change. Typical अपने जो है हमना सुनी जे clinical organizations छे, जे pharmaceutical organizations छे, they rely on either running the clinical studies themselves or they outsource it to a clinical research organization or a contract research organization. The terms are used interchangeably, but a CRO, as the abbreviation is called. The majority of CROs focus on pharmaceutical clients, and the pharmaceutical development cycle is very different from a diagnostic or a device cycle.
So pharmaceutical में दवा हुआ है.
Pharmaceutical में दवा हुआ है. Diagnostics के अंदर the tests, devices, etc. ये हुआ. So what our company does is it focuses on providing clinical research for diagnostics and medical devices, and it's end-to-end research. A sponsor or a client would come to us and say, this is the kind of test that I want approved, or this is the device that I want approved. We would write the protocol for them. We would enroll the subjects, collect the samples, perform the analysis, collect the data, do the statistical analysis as well, and provide the results. So that entire end-to-end analysis is what we would perform. So we've been in operation only about 5 months now. So very recent. Ne again akamolano ehsan akamolani dua. हमें company शुरू की थी, and a few months later I was featured in the Global Healthcare magazine because they saw this as a niche that was very much needed as well, and something that a lot of sponsors have been looking at as well. So looking forward to growing again and making this a successful venture, Moulana Ali. So that's been my journey so far. So, still based in Chicago, in the US, and have been there for about 15 years now.
ઇન્ટરેસ્ટિંગ છે હમણાં કોવિડના ટાઈમમાં ન્યૂઝમાં શાયદ સગલા જ એમ અવેર હશે કે વેક્સિન આવી રહી ને ટેસ્ટિંગ ચાલુ છે ને એમ એટલે કોવિડના ટાઈમમાં this whole ecosystem of having to test drugs એ ઘણું પોપ્યુલર થઈ ગયું. પણ આજે છે મુસ્તફાભાઈ વાત કરી રહ્યા છો કે ટેસ્ટને તમને ક્લિનિકલ ટ્રાયલમાં નાખવાની છે કે how effective is the test or the machine or the device or whatever. Completely I don't think મને બી નહોતી ખબર આજે આપણે વાત કરી એના પહેલા એમ બ્લુ ઓશન જેવું લાગી રહ્યું છે.
हाँ जी सब हवे सब what अपने घना अपने realize नहीं था तो सब के when we जे कोई भी test हो सब we have to somehow prove that test is able to do what it says it does, and that is the aspect of the clinical study to show that it can work and it can detect a COVID test say for example, right? So there are two aspects of you want the test to detect COVID and only COVID, and you want the test to detect COVID when COVID is present. So the sensitivity and the specificity, as we call it in the technical terms, those are the two aspects that are most important when it comes to diagnostic tests. irrespective of the technology. But sir, medical devices वास्ते a similar concept, sir. But the sensitivity and specificity is still important, but in a different modality. So, for example, sir, if you take a cardiac device that is able to detect an arrhythmia, the device, we need to show that the device can detect the arrhythmia. It can detect the right arrhythmias, and it can detect an arrhythmia only when an arrhythmia is present. So, trying to minimize the number of false positives and the number of false negatives becomes a critical aspect, which is the primary focus of clinical execution area.
હવે આનું થોડું વખતે સેગવે કરીએ ફાતિમીના સિક્કાના પાટોના ઉપર તો શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ ઘણા વર્ષોથી આનું કલેક્ટ કરવાનો બી શોખ છે અને એઝ અ રિઝલ્ટ ઘણું બધું રિસર્ચ બી એના ઉપર કર્યું છે તો આમાં આયા કેમ આ હોબીના અંદર હોબીઝ perhaps not the right one આ શોખના અંદર આયા કેમ એની પહેલા થોડી વાત કરો ને પછી થોડું સિક્કાઓને બી થોડું ડિટેલમાં અંદર કરીએ.
जी सर. So some our interest also started घना almost 15 एक वर्ष पहला सब 20 एक वर्ष से થઈ ગયા છે સર. सब जना उबाई भाई साहब and I had visited a coin show sir, in Chicago, and that was the instigation sir. That was the spark. तो मैं coin show में गया, मैं घनी बड़ी coins ओ बात की थी सब जनाब साथे भी discussion था, and that's when I realized that this is there's a lot to be learned from coinage and from numismatics. So that's when I started, sir. That's when I started collecting and also researching. Such a અહિંમતના સિક્કાઓ છે, એ કેવાથી શરૂ થયા, what can we learn અખબારના બારામાં, સિક્કાઓ સી, just looking at this, looking at how coinage has evolved, etc. What can we learn about economics? Again, using numismatics as the base. So that's how it started, sir.
જાહેર સદુરીના કારણે બ્રાઉનડી નાતાજી વાળા નિસર પડાના હતા તો વहाँ પછી એમના જે ફિમેલના અંદર બી છે જે માના જે પછી હડિયાઓ વાપરા આપણે ઠીકના સિક્કાઓ છે જે સેફીમાં સેકન્ડ ગોળ વાળના ઉપર ડિસ્પ્લે થાય છે એટલે ગયા હશે દેખવો હશે કે આમાં પાછળ ખબરનું નામ તો આમ એક ખુદ એઝ અ હોલ માર્કેટ ફોર ધીસ એમ એટલે હમણાં આજે કે જા યુ કેન people are buying and selling them.
Ji sir, there's a whole market. So numismatics નું market છે જ. પણ સાહેબ એના અલાવા અહિંમતના coinage ની market is also expanding quite a bit, sir. હવે સાહેબ આપણે numismatics નું જોઈએ સર તો every coin has two aspects of value. One is the material value of the coin, which is basically based on the metal that the coin is based on, etc., and the numismatic value. The numismatic value is the value that is assigned based on either how ancient the coin is or how unique it is, etc. So even in the last 15 years, ever since I started collecting, what I've seen is that the numismatic value of Fatimi coins, Ahimmatna sikkao, that has grown exponentially. सब के હવે सब typical સિક્કાઓ જોઈએ सब अपने અહિંમતના, so their dinar is 4.2 grams of pure gold and 99.9% 24 karat gold, and પહેલા એની value was just based on the gold કે 4 ગ્રામ gold છે એનો ભાવ આજે એટલો છે તો આ કોઈનની value એટલી થશે. હવે it's not only that, sir. So that material value is there, but then the numismatic value has grown significantly. So ઘણી coins જોયે છે સર. હમણાં recently I saw Imam મોઈઝના જમાનાના સિક્કા મદીના મુનવ્વરાની મિન્ટના અંદર ઇશ્યુ થયેલા, that was on sale and it sold for almost $450,000. So that is not so the difference between the material value and the numismatic value is significant.
ઘણું રેર હશે ને એમાં.
જી સર, ઘણું રેર છે. સબ જે ટિપિકલી સબ જે મક્કા મદીના ને જે some of the more tertiary mints છે સર, એના કોઇન્સો ઘણા રેર હોય છે. And typically they go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
તો ફર્સ્ટ જે હશે તે આઈ એમ અસ્યુમિંગ કે મેહદી ઇમામ લોન કરવામાં આવે છે તો મેહદી ઇમામના કોઈન્સથી સ્ટાર્ટ થયો હશે ને કે ફાતિમીનું જે કોઈનેજ શરૂ થયો એમ જ છે?
જી સર, જી સર. હવે અહિંમતના કોઈનેજ શરૂ થયા મેહદી ઇમામના જમાનથી. So very interestingly, sir, ઘણા વર્ષો પહેલા I had seen Moulana Ali coin issue થયેલા બસરાની મિન્ટના. But that is the only time I've seen that coin. It had sold for an exorbitant value. અને મને તે વખત by the time I researched and looked at tried to find out the authenticity, it had already sold. તો અને આ બાદ મને મિલા નથી. પણ અહિંમતના સિક્કાઓ ઇમામ મહેદી ઝુહુરથી શરૂ થયા. જેવારે ઇમામ મહેદીનું ઝુહુર થયું તેવારે અફ્રિકાના અંદર તો મીન્સ એસ્ટાબ્લિશ હતા તે વખત એના મીન્સ ઇમામ ઇસ્લામના નામથી મિન્ટ થયા. But interestingly, sir, યમનના અંદર at the same time 4 જગ્યાથી મીન્સ કોઇન્સ ઇશ્યુ થયા ઇમામ મહેદી ના નામથી. એ સબ જેમ આખા બુરહાનમુલ્લા ફરમાવે છે કે ઇમામ મહેદી અબ્દુલ્લા બિન મહેદી છે તો હરેક કોઈના પર જોશો સર. So that is how the name જે ઇમામ ઇસ્મત છે સબ નામ ને એમ લખેલું very clearly નજર આવે છે. અબ્દુલ્લા બિન મહેદી બિલ્લા. તો ને સર that is the unique aspect sir. જે અહિંમતના સિક્કાનો unique aspect is કે હરેક સિક્કાના ઉપર there are a few common themes. One is કે કલિમત શહાદત પૂરી लिखी હશે. લા ઇલાહા ઇલ્લલ્લાહ મુહમ્મદ રસૂલુલ્લાહ અલી અલ-મબીઉલ્લાહ. Pieces ના અંદર હશે between the front and the back, but you can make it as you piece it together. But sab Quran માંથી બે આયતો typically that are used sir, that are on the periphery sir, between the front and the back. But sab જે ઇમામના નામ છે સબ ઈ નામ કોઈનના પર લખા હશે ને સબ જે વરસ ને મિન્ટ ને મહિનાનું આ બી હશે. તો the name of the mint, the year in which it is issued and the month. હવે સાહેબ all of those aspects contribute to the rarity of the coins. ઘણા કોઇન્સો જોઈએ છે સાહેબ જે મોહરમના અંદર ઇશ્યુ થયા છે those are much higher value. સાહેબ શેરુલા અંદર ઇશ્યુ થયા છે those are much higher value. नेमल इत्तेफाक से पर अपने ओपन मार्केट में अंदर भी हम जो ऐसे those seem to be much higher values. But since the location of the mint drives the value. Also the type of coins. Where Ghana coins says they were posthumous issues. Where sab I'm alayhi salam na coin says એમાં ઘણા સબ ઇમામ મહેદીના નામથી ઇશ્યુ થયેલા બટ કાયમ ઇમામના જમાનના અંદર એઝ પોસ્ટમસ ઇશ્યુઝ ઓફ ઇમામ મહેદી તારીખથી ખબર પડશે. પછી સાહેબ ઇમામ મંસૂરના બી એમ જ છે સાહેબ ને સબ આપણે હિસ્ટ્રી આ કરીએ તો દેર આર સમ કનેક્શન્સ દેટ કેન બી મેડ સર કે જ્યારે સબ ફોર એક્ઝામ્પલ સાહેબ ઇમામ મંસૂર જેવારે દજ્જાલને સાથે જંગ કરવાને પધારા હશે તો એના posthumous issues ઇમામ કાયમના થયા હશે તે ટાઈમ પર etc. So there's a lot of Akbar relation that we can draw sir, just by looking at the coin, when it was issued, કે કયા ઇમામના નામથી ઇશ્યુ થયા છે etc.
તો આ જે ગોલ્ડ ડિનાર્સ પછી સાથે સિલ્વર દિરહમ્સ બી હોય?
સિલ્વર દિરહમ જ હોય સર. હવે ગોલ્ડના અંદર બી સર there are different types of dinars. There's a full dinar, which is 4 grams of gold, and there's a quarter dinar. The quarter dinar is 1 gram of gold. Pachi dirham. So, dirham under there are different categories as well. Dirham, half dinar, dirham, a third dirham, many different more categories than dinars. Pachi sab Imam Hakim na zaman under damma be issued thayala sir. Multan under sir, in around the Pakistan, around the Multan areas. So Imam Muiz ne Imam Hakim na damma Malaysia sir, we can see them on sale many times. Na sir, it's known as a damma sir. It's a copper coin sir. So The last is the glass jetons. So each are different metals or elements આપણે જેમ કહે એના coins આવે છે. હવે jeton નું sub there's another aspect as I've been researching into it sir કે because the coins are of pure gold so એમ શું થતું હતું કે people used to tamper with the coins. એટલે સબ આપણે typically આપણે round coin જોઈએ so people used to shave off the edge of the coin. આપણે ઘણી બધી coins ના પરથી થોડું થોડું shave કરીએ so that adds up to quite a bit of gold. But what that means is that we are devaluing the coin. So in order to counter that, that's when the glass jetons were introduced in the weight of the coin. એટલે હવે dinar નું jeton હોય so dinar નું jeton is 4 grams of gold, 4 grams of glass. હવે glass cannot be tampered with sir. So it's very easy to apne મને કોઈ dinar આપે if I weigh it against the 4 gram of glass I know okay whether that dinar has been tampered with or not. So in જે regulation maintain કરવાનું હતું that became much easier. But see, that was why jetons were introduced. But see, sir, what happened is that eventually jetons became their own currencies. Okay, they started being used as अपने आप चिल्लर ना चाहिए. तो ने पची in order to add to the authenticity of jetons, there were flakes, metal flakes that were getting added to jetons. So the gold flakes or silver flakes or under
embedded in the glass.
Embedded in the glass. So that started adding its own value, authenticity to the jetons themselves.
હમણાં આપણે જે વાત કરી gold coins, silver coins અને પછી glass jetons.
Glass jeton and copper coins sir, that's all.
તો Mehdi Imam si કે Amir Imam તો એક જ સરખા હોય coins કે the design changed from time period to time period.
हाँ जी sir, the design has evolved. हर एक ज़माना अंदर सब there was some uniqueness of design that was introduced. So Mehdi Imam it time पर भी it evolved into its own unique design. Imam Mehdi ना ज़माना. पर ये कायम Imam ना ज़माना अंदर there was a new aspect that was introduced, which was a center-based design. That was the first time a center-based design was introduced. પછી સાહેબ મોઇઝ ઇમામના ઝમાના અંદર જ્યારે quarter dinars introduced થયા that added a new element to a design as well, which was more of an intersecting lines design. Quarter dinars are very small sir, so એના અંદર to add the year of the and the name of the mint became difficult. So the lattice design as it was called had એના વચમાં Arabina alfaz, huruf, numbers, etc. That when you piece them together, you can get these aspects that I mentioned sir, previously. પછી સાહેબ જેવારે important events થાય sir, કઈ ફતેહ થયા કોઈ city, Mansuria ફતેહ થયા so at those times new designs were also introduced. હવે sir, the uniqueness of Fatimi coins, Aimna Sikka is ke I feel that it is rightly called the golden age of Islam. हम भी अपने historians ने पूछे they say that period was called the golden age. That can be made out by the purity of the coinage. जो है सब तो there no other currency has the same level of purity as we see in the Fatimi Sikka. But some unique aspect is also yes, the quality of the design was maintained. In spite of the number of mints, we don't see a deterioration in quality. So that also leads to the fact that the die design had to be quite strictly controlled, and those dies had to be then also maintained across the regions. So the artisans each time now per say it's a very unique skill sir, to maintain that level of quality across this amount of coinage.
Hypothetically મોહિદ ઇમામના જમાનામાં એક મક્કા મદીના બી મીટ થઈ રહ્યું છે અને નોર્થ વેસ્ટ આફ્રિકાના અંદર બી મીટ થઈ રહ્યું છે. નું એક જીઓગ્રાફિક સ્પ્રેડ છે ને.
જી સર, નહીં યમનના બી મીટ થઈ રહ્યું છે.
અને
So, in spite of the geographic spread, and it's unique, sir, because એમ નથી કે the same coin is being minted. Because યમનનું જે મક્કા અને મદીનાનું જે coin છે, that will have the name of the city. So that uniqueness is there in the coin. Plus North African coin છે, that will say Mehdiya or Mansuriya or જે બી ગામ છે એમાં. So in spite of their uniqueness, the quality is still maintained. So that means not only are the dies unique, but they've been created in a manner that can support this high volume minting.
અને પછી સિન્સ મુસ્લિમ ઇમામનો જમાન લંબો જમાન છે હિસ્ટોરિકલી રીતે દેખીએ તો અહીમત તારીખમાં તો આમ શું કે કોઇનેજ બી મોસ્ટ જે હમણાં અવેલેબલ હશે તે મુસ્લિમ ઇમામના જમાનના છે.
જી સર, મુસ્તનસર ઇમામના જમાના અને મોઇઝ ઇમામના જમાના, ઇમામ હાકિમના જમાના are the most commonly available coinage, sir. હવે સર બીજું ઇન્ટરેસ્ટિંગ પોઈન્ટ આપે રેફર કર્યું સર કે આપણે સર when we study the mints that were located and how the mints were spread, સર એનાથી આપણે એમ અંદાજો આવે કે જે મમલકત હતી એ કેમ એક્સપેન્ડ થયેલી. તો when we follow the mints, we can say કે જ્યારે મેહદીયાના અંદર મિન્ટ એસ્ટાબ્લિશ થયું, પછી મંસૂરિયાના અંદર થયું, પછી નેક્સ્ટ આના અહીંયા સિકિલિયામાં થયું એક્સેટ્રા. So that showed how the dynasty or the mamlakat expanded at the time. ને સર જેમ આપણે કીધું સર ઇમામ મુસ્તનસિરના જમાનાના અંદર was the maximum number of mints. So there were 29 unique locations, unique cities where there were mints, and a total of about 70 different mints. So that was the amount of spread. So Sham, Sulayhi, નીચે યમન, ઇફ્રિકિયા, ને even ઇરાકના તરફ. So that entire area had been spread out. તો ને પછી ઇમામ આમિરના ટાઈમ પર ઇસ્કંદરિયાના અંદર બી મીન્સ એસ્ટાબ્લિશ થયા હતા, એલેક્ઝાન્ડર. તો માના બી છે. ને પછી જ્યારે તૈયબ ઇમામ પડદે પર પધારા, જ્યારે મોલાના રોઝન મલેકા continued the coinage aspect. તો જે સુલેહી કોઇન્સો છે સબ, they follow the same level of purity and intricacy of design as Ahimad na coins છે, but the weight is a little bit less. So it is no longer the full dinar is not 4 grams of gold. It is actually a little bit less than 4 grams of gold. The quarter dinar is not actually a quarter dinar, it's actually a fifth dinar. તો હવે સબ એનું બી થોડું એક્સ્ટ્રાપોલેટ થઈ શકે કે હવે આ તો અહીમતના કોઇન્સ નથી, તો but the level of purity and the design intricacies is still maintained. So that's also a very interesting aspect to study.
તો સુલૈહી કોઇન્સમાં પછી લિખાણમાં શું હોય?
લિખાણના અંદર ઇમામના નામો હોય છે. જે આ છે જે મોલાના હોલસેલ મલેકાના નામો નહીં હતા, તે મોલાના હોલસેલ મલેકાના જે વખત એસ્ટાબ્લિશ થયા કોઇન્સ, તો એમાં જે ઇમામ આમિરના નામથી ઇશ્યુ થયેલા કોઇન્સ.
ખબર કેમ પડે કે આ હોલસેલ મલેકાના અમરથી મીટ થયા છે? કેમ કે યમનમાં થયા છે એના આવશે?
યમનમાં થયા છે, and the weight difference.
And the weight. And the design હોય છે આમિર ઇમામના જે કોઇન્સ હોય
similar designs. Designs are similar, the weight is different. And the city sab je yaman અંદર થયા છે, and the years, તો એનાથી બી ખબર પડી જાય કે so these are all posthumous issues કે સબ જે જેવા પડદે થઈ ગયેલા તે ટાઈમ પછી થયા છે.
અને હમણાં મિલે છે ધીસ કન્ટિન્યુઅસલી સર્ફેસ in the market?
These stuff है सब. अबे सब the other interesting thing is कि because of the purity of the gold, so these coins people started using them before they became collector items. They were being used as jewelries. तो घना जे conquerors हटा crusades ना अंदर etc. They were taking these coins and making them into earrings or putting them on belts or crown etc. or just collecting them as pure gold items. तो हमना घना बड़ा hoards मिले छे. जे sunken treasures जो मिले छे, no longer a pirate's fantasy. It's sometimes a reality. सब हमना मिला सब. There was a big hoard of coins that were found off the coast of Italy. Almost 1,000 coins. Imam Hakim na zaman. So they keep on surfacing.
એટલે કે shipwreck થયું હશે ને એમાં
Shipwreck થયું હશે તો એના અંદરથી હવે એમના એ લોકોને મળે.
1000 coins.
હવે સાહેબ એના અંદર so I did some extrapolation research sir કે if you look जब જેમ આપણે number of mints જોઈએ and we assume the number of the capacity of those mints etc. The speculation is કે Imam Mustansir ના જમાના અંદર there would have been about 12 million coins in circulation. So आपने आप तो जे अहिमतनो खजानो छे that aside sir, this is just what is being circulated in the open market. So that also then leads us to an estimate of the value of the economy at the time. હવે આપણે population હમણાંનો population and you extrapolate it back to the population at the time and you look at the number of coins in circulation etc. It was a very rich society. So the net worth of a person was about $100,000 at the time.
Average income.
Average income. So अपने जो जाए तो सब that's a very prosperous society. So again rightly so सब के जे हमना historians का कि the Fatimid age was the golden age of Islam, which is very true and it's very apparent from what we see from the coinage as well.
એના કોઈ historical records કહે છે કે એક mint માં in the lifetime of one mint or something इतना coins we should have એ 12 million ના number તક કેમ પહોંચા?
हाँ जी sir, that's actually a historical record. So there was some research done by the Ismaili Institute that led to this numbers.
And that's Imam na bini જાય. So it's all?
जी sir, all from Imam Mehdi से Imam Amir तक, પછી Moulana Ali AS ना coins से. I have all of those in my collection. तो इंशाल्लाह आता मुझे सफर था शिकागो तो मौलाना ने अर्ज करवाने मौके मिले.
અને એમ હવે especially as એમ goldની value બી વધી રહી છે, the way things are going right now, it might get more difficult to find the M.
जी sir, it gets more difficult to not to find sir, it gets more expensive to buy. So if I compare myself to 10 years ago when I was buying the coin to versus now, it's almost been a 10 times increase in price. So it becomes less and less affordable at that time. So I'm also seeing a lot of institutional buyers. Okay, a lot of people, institutes, buying coinage, etc. And they are spending some on auctions and coins. So people are spending $600,000-700,000 per auction buying these coins.
More likely कि कोई individual करता है कि institution है जैसे कि जगह.
जी sir.
They were almost coming up on time. So ये भी मैं ऐड करूँ शायद कोई ना discussion में कहीं ऐसा cover करना
mostly cover थेंगे सब. The only the thing we can add is कि जब silver जो है सब तो there is a thought कि as there was a shortage of silver, it's the silver dirhams are more rare. So हमना भी अपने जो है even though the value of the silver dirhams is less, It's more rare to come by good quality silver dirhams. Also, for some reason, the silver dirhams have tarnished more than the gold dinars. So, inscriptions etc. એ ઘણું worn out થઈ ગયું છે અને મળી જાય છે but એટલા same quality ના નહીં મળતા dirhams.
તો પાછું 24 કેરેટ ગોલ્ડ હોય તો ગોલ્ડ હોય છે એટલે નરમ બી હોય ને એટલા 1000 વર્ષ થઈ ગયા પણ તો બી they're in good enough condition કે વંચાઈ જાય ને
હા જી સર they're very good condition. Most of them have not been restored, so they are in their original condition. Sir, જે થોડું જે tarnish ને તો થયું હશે we keep it, हमने collect भी કરીએ છે તો we keep it that way, sir. We don't restore it. We keep it in its original form. ઘણા બધા restore થયા હોય છે સર તો એનાથી ને ઘણા તો સર there are few that are found that were uncirculated coins, sir. So these have been the treasure hoards na andar ne ase they're just as if they were minted yesterday.
Shukran Sheikh Mustafa bhai, it's a very insightful discussion.
Yeah, fun, sir. Thank you for having me. बस